We just received excerpts from Barack Obama's team. It's from a speech the former president gave at a DNC fundraiser Friday evening. And he offered some tough political advice to his fellow Democrats. I'm going to read to you a few of the experts. He said, I think it's going to require a little bit less navel-gazing and a little less whining and being in fetal positions. It's going to require Democrats to just toughen up. Later, he says he's been surprised by progressive liberals who stood for all kinds of stuff, who seem to be kind of cowed and intimidated and shrinking away. And then he called out university presidents, where he said, I've said, if your core mission, if your core value is to teach, you may teach without compromising values of academic independence. You may lose some grant money temporarily. That's why you have big endowments. I want to bring back Julie Roginski. It goes on kind of in that vein, but is he right?
Well, he's partially right. He's partially wrong. I mean, I don't know who he's talking to here because the grassroots are energized. The grassroots have been furious at leadership in Washington for their inability to deliver any kind of message, to deliver any kind of contrast with Trump, to shrink, to send sternly worded letters, to do nothing that actually advances the ball. And so if he's talking to a group of leaders at Governor Phil Murphy's house, I would say maybe he's talking to Governor Murphy, who is close to Donald Trump, ran to Bedminster consistently to meet with him as friends with Jared and Ivanka. But he's not talking to people in New Jersey, for instance, who are furious at their leadership and not being able to do more to counter Donald Trump. I would say with the DNC, he asked people to give money to the DNC. I would say that donors are holding back from giving money to the DNC until the DNC shows them that they know how to spend that money wisely and messaging properly in order to win elections. And they're not seeing that right now. So, I would love to know who President Obama is talking to here. If he was talking to the people in that room, he's absolutely right. That was Ken Martin. That was Phil Murphy. He's absolutely right. Those people need to stand up and be a little bit more tough. If he's talking to the rest of us, we're waiting anxiously for them to do that.
Well, but here's what he says to you. Stop looking for the quick fix. Stop looking for the Messiah. You have great candidates running races right now. He's talked specifically about gubernatorial races in New Jersey and Virginia. He says people who are pragmatic, common sense, have a desire to help people, and who both have remarkable track records of service. I do think there is a fairness in saying the Democrats have been pushing for who's the leader, who's the leader, who's the leader. And he's saying, okay, right in front of you, you could be spending money on and working for a couple of people who, at least in his mind, are leaders and would be good leaders.
Well, he's not wrong. I mean, Spamberger and Sherrill are both good leaders, and they've had great track records, and I hope they both win. I think a lot of Democrats on the ground are going to do what they can to make sure that both Abigail Spamberger and Mikey Sherrill become governors of their respective states. However, we need our leadership, who have certain tools at their disposal that the rest of us don't have, to do their job.
So it's not an either or.
Of course not. It's to draw a contrast with Trump. Look, you had people at the No Kings rally coming out in droves. Those people need their leaders who actually have an ability to do something that the rest of us don't have. They have tools at their, as I keep saying, at their disposal by virtue of being senators, by virtue of being members of Congress, by virtue of being governors, to do something about that. And they're not doing, in my opinion, as much as they should. The rest of us are doing our job. It's time that they do theirs.
Julie Roginski, it's always good to have you here.
Thank you so much.